Call the meeting to order. And first order of business is roll call.
Ms. Bame, Ms. Chaput, Mr. Dugan,
Here.
Mr. Dribbin, Mr. Eppers, Ms. Finney,
Here.
Mr. Heil,
Here.
Ms. Johnson,
Here,
Oh, she's there.
She's here, but she's muted.
here.
I see
Can
her.
you hear me?
Ms. Kirkton,
Here.
Mr. Klimp is here, and Mr. Yochley.
Okay, thank you.
Just real quick, Melissa, we are having problems hearing you. I'll check on our ends as well.
Okay,
Can't
I
hear
am
you.
on.
Oh, now she's muted.
Yeah, I wasn't.
No.
I think it's definitely your end.
Let's try one more time.
Can you hear me now?
Yep,
Yeah.
there we go.
Hey, I can hear you too. Wonderful.
Okay. The next order of business is approval of the minutes. They've been distributed. Are there any additions or corrections? If not, I have a motion to adopt the minutes. Matthew,
Second.
second Kyle, all in favor?
Aye.
I,
Opposed? No. Okay, the minutes are adopted. No public comment. Okay, no governance actions. Member discussion and questions. Seeing none. No new business. We'll move on to old business and discussion on charter articles 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And Neil, thank you.
Let me start out by saying that I've given a great deal of thought to the structural aspects. I've given a great deal of thought to the structural aspects of the charter, and I would remind you of two things, and we've said this a lot, that obviously it's the charter that defines and sets out the authority of city council, the city manager, city officials in terms of what they do and how they do it. But it also creates a threshold and it creates limits. One of the things that you're doing is creating a limit on the power of the council by leaving these things in, which is always a good idea, okay? Because it mandates that there are certain ways that things are performed, and it mandates that these things will be done at a minimum throughout the existence of the charter. Now, obviously, the charter can be changed. That's why you're here. But keep in mind that a certain minimum threshold is a good idea because it imposes upon the council certain controls or certain limitations. So for instance, if you demand that there is in the charter, if you set out that there is an administrative service and that there are going to be directors of each department, charter's not free to, or excuse me, council's not free to change that. The more you relegate to charter, to council and to the ordinance process, the more control you've given council, which can be a good thing if you've got a good council. But you don't write these things for good councils. You write these things for bad councils. You write it for those councils who are trying to trample on rights. You write it for councils who are trying to take control of everything. Okay. And again, I think that it's an important thing to note and to recognize that those limitations are part of the reasons that you put these things in here. Otherwise, it would seem like there's some redundancies in here. Having said that, the proposed language for Article 4 that you all have, it would be acceptable. But I still think that there are some things that you need to leave in. Like, for instance, Article 5 in the Department of Finance. That needs to be left in there so that those duties are clear and so that those duties are spelled out. And frankly, at least as far as the charter is concerned, those duties are immutable. you can't just by saying, we can create a finance department and we'll by ordinance define what it's going to do. You need to do that here. You need to do it in the charter in order to ensure that it will always be the same and that those duties will be consistent throughout the life of the city. The same is true for Article 7, but not Article 6. So frankly, the only two that I think you can really take out is you can take out Article 6, which is the Department of Public Works. You're already enumerating that someplace else. That is such a short and brief description that you're really going to take care of that by ordinance anyway. And you've described that there is going to be a Department of Public Works. I just don't think you need to put it in. However, it doesn't offend me to leave it in there either. But if you're truly looking to shorten this and you're looking to eliminate some things, that can go and the Department of Law can go. Because again, those two things are really unnecessary. They will exist anyway, particularly Public Works, because it's a duty that the city has in order to provide this information. And you've identified that with your existing language in Article 4. Article 7 needs to be in there because Article 7 talks about personnel and Article 7 talks about rights of employees. And again, you can take it out, but if you do that, again, you're leaving to council all of those rights. If you leave it in the charter, it creates greater rights, more enforceable rights than what you would have if you left it solely to council. Again, the personnel director, the merit system rules, all of that is contained in Article 7. And my recommendation is that you leave those in there because it creates greater protection to the employees of the city. Again, 8, I said, could come out as we've talked about. Municipal court obviously has to stay in because you want that duty to be clear. Boards and commissions, again, we've talked about the ability to create boards and commissions. You could probably eliminate Article 10 if you really wanted to eliminate the article. Again, it's a redundancy. Parks and Recreation is mentioned in there as part of your boards and commissions because you are creating a Parks and Recreation Commission. But I don't think that's essential. That can be done in your Article 4 language, which says you will have the ability to create commissions and you can do that by ordinance. And then you get into Article 11, which is planning and zoning. Again, essential. You have to leave planning and zoning in there because we have to make sure that everyone is clear. And when I say everyone, developers, people who are contractors who are looking to do whatever they're going to do in the city, or people who are just buying, who want to build homes, who want to put additions on their homes. You want to make sure that that's set out in the charter because you want that to be an immutable protection that's in there as well. So that's my general overview. If there are specific questions, maybe that's the better way to address it. I regret that Paul isn't here because he always has pointed questions on these issues. But that's my vision of things. Again, and I base this opinion on the case law that we see out there too. When we see challenges to city power, we see challenges to city power where they say it's not in the charter. You can't do what you're doing because it's not in the charter. So we do want to give at least some lip service to all of the things that are here. Can we shorten the language? We can, but we want to make sure that that power is protected. At the same time, we're also providing limitations to that power.
So Neil, is your alternate language that you proposed a couple of months ago, you're saying we should strike that and keep it as is originally?
I would tell you that you could use that language because that will accomplish what I've talked about, which again, council shall adopt by ordinance in Chapter 3 of the City Code, an administrative plan of organization and structure for at least the following departments. And now you've enumerated what those departments are. The administrative plan shall be consistent with the charter, and unless otherwise required by law, all boards and commissions provided for in this administrative plan shall be appointed by the council. So again, I think that does, and in the third paragraph, additional departments, boards, and commissions may be created by ordinance. I think this does what you needed to do. What we already have in there and what we've already enumerated in this particular language, I think does address what you need structurally. But again, it's either way. I have no problems and no heartburn leaving the language that is still in the charter right now in there. This is just sort of a shorter form.
Okay. And then, for example, like in Article 5 is the purchasing agent and purchases. A lot of that's done through the state of Missouri. Is that still current? Does
That-
it need to stay?
That's still current. What this doesn't address the statutory obligations. It simply says that we're going to designate someone as a purchasing agent. I don't know that we've ever done that. Okay, now that the important part of that is if we are giving the city manager signatory powers, we want something in the charter that would allow someone from the outside who is seeking to enforce that contract, whatever it might be. We want to give them a basis to recognize the authority of the city manager in that regard. So I think that the purchasing agent aspect is one that I would recommend you keep,
Okay.
only because it gives the city manager signatory power. Now, we at the same time have limitations that we have placed on the city manager and how much he or she can spend at a given time without coming to council for approval. That's done by ordinance. And so again, we've integrated the two and they're working together. All this does is says to the outside world, the city manager has the authority to do this.
Okay.
And again, in 5, we have things like fiscal year and all those sorts of things. We want to leave all that in there.
Yeah. And then there was some tweaking on like 5.3, the approval of excess expenditures that maybe we wanted to stick in the word knowingly because it's pretty much you make a mistake, you're out of here.
Right.
So those sort of things we could propose.
Those absolutely, yes. And that doesn't change, all that does is sort of fine tune the language.
Yeah.
It makes it more specific to what it is you're looking to punish or I guess deter.
Matthew?
So the city ignores the things in this that they don't want to do. So how is that any different if, with what you are talking about? So, we've got a city manager who's supposed to be in charge of departments.
Right.
And is not.
Well, who can't
We-
be?
It could be.
Right.
Could be. We're supposed to have a legal department and you are it. So you are our department.
Mhm.
I mean, it does not reflect what's going on now. So it seems to me that
Well, we do have a
the
legal
concern
department.
about taking it out is really sort of, I hear what you're saying and I understand that.
Okay.
It just seems like we're going to ignore what we don't want to do anyways.
So
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 the
tell-
councils are, whether they're good or bad,
tell me what we're ignoring.
city manager, being in charge of
Being in charge of what?
departments.
Well, the city manager can be, but doesn't have to be.
I thought the city manager would be.
So so let's go back to the
Okay,
city
let's
manager.
look at
language.
that language.
Let's go back. I'm trying to do it there. It's just a whole lot easier to do it here. So under powers and duties, which is 3.3, the city manager shall be the chief executive and administrative officer of the city and shall be responsible to the council for the proper administration of all affairs of the city. And to that end, she will have the power to and be required to do the following. It spells out these things.
Serve as the
That-
director of one department and with the consent of the council, serve as the director of 2 or more departments.
So we've had situations where I'm trying to think of a situation where we've actually had her serve as a director. We've had interims. We don't have to, but we can. Okay. So again, this
Now, this
doesn't
says
change.
Yeah. she
I understand.
serves-
I
yeah.
understand. She says she shall.
Yeah, I don't need her to. But
Well,
what I'm saying is that the language here is being, the council can make changes regardless of the language here. So protecting us from bad councils, which I certainly, appreciate, is not really gonna be very effective in that regard.
well, I think that she is actually the director of personnel. I'm just trying to remember what she's the director of. Easier if she was here. Eric, do you know?
I thought she wasn't director of anything.
So we have multiple offices which are departments. So personnel is a great example. Human resources really an office, two persons, but I think ultimately that the city manager does serve in that role in terms of coming to the personnel board and really bringing those, if there are any actions and then the policy amendments. I don't know if we've ever explicitly said they are the director.
Yeah, because I mean, it's clear that she should be, that person should be in charge of those things. That's,
But we can fix that. We can simply, and council can fix that and say, okay, you're the director of personnel. We've now accomplished what the charter says. It doesn't make this faulty that there has been some oversight in terms of making sure that we're addressing each and every issue. Might make us question, do we need to have that here? But again, I don't know what the meaning, what the purpose of this was. I don't know why they put that in there one way or another. I mean, it seems to me all the directors, and you're saying this other places, all the directors are answerable to the city manager. So you're putting her in a position where she's answerable to herself.
no, I don't deny it. I mean, that's
Sure.
the way it
But-
should work.
But I see that as one thing. Why take out an entire section because of one phrase?
Well, that is, I think that there are probably other examples, but that's, for one phrase, yes. I
But
can-
again, and I'm not
Yeah,
trying to be argumentative,
I understand. No,
but just a minute, are you the director of personnel?
okay, congratulations.
Hi. Yes? Yes. So we do have her as the director of a department. But again,
Bad example on my part.
yes, but again, come back to, I want to address the specific issues, the generalities are fine. But the specific issues, again, we have this, I don't know why subsection 5 is in there, I don't know why city manager has to be the director and answerable to herself, but again, so that was self-insured. I will tell you that that's, again, that's one. We could take that out.
Yeah, and I thought, because I thought the reason for us doing this was to give the council more and the manager more flexibility. And you are arguing that we should not.
No, I'm arguing that you should have a threshold. I'm arguing that there are certain protections that are in there that protects us, what the citizens of Webster Groves, from a rogue council. Not this council by any means. But a rogue, but
Just say you're not done.
a,
Okay.
but it's, well, maybe that's. But it's protected from a rogue council.
Uh-huh.
And so it comes down to a situation where you want to have a framework that is a predictable framework. That's the other part of it, is predictability. If you simply say, we are the city, period, and all power is vested in the council, you could do that, but you're really not a charter form of government at that point. Part of the idea of a charter is to outline these things. So again, I think it's essential that you do have a structure that's out, that is a predictable, that says you're going to do these things at a minimum. Now, again, you can free up some of their powers, and you're doing that by basically saying, look, you can create an administrative structure by ordinance, but these departments are going to exist.
But that's just, that would be, all we need to do is to enumerate those then.
Which is to make sure that no matter what, those will always exist.
Correct.
Yes. And that way, no council, no future council could, unless they change the charter to take those things out, no future council could eliminate the Department of Personnel. You couldn't eliminate, the police department. You couldn't eliminate the fire department. Now, you could, so there's been discussions about mergers, and there's been discussions about joining up with other departments to create a large district. That would require a charter change. That could be done. But again, in the absence of doing that, you want to make sure that there's a provision in here that gives them the power, or that mandates that they will provide that service to the city.
Maybe. That seems like a straw argument that we would get rid of the police and not do anything else and not take care of those things. So but still, I understand your point. I
Right.
would go more for
And
flexibility.
I'm speaking in generalities in this regard, but again, it still comes back to, you want to create thresholds. in my opinion. You want to create thresholds in order to make sure that there is a certain minimum level of service that will always be provided. And there's a certain structure, a minimum structure that will always be acknowledged. And part of the reason you're doing that, again, is the limitation, but it's also so that the world knows that there is a predictable process. If I'm coming into Webster Groves for the purpose of doing business, or I'm going to move to Webster Groves, there's a predictable process that is out, an enforceable process that if people aren't following, I have the ability to seek enforcement.
Can I say, I liked your point about the Department of Law, right? Like, again, so if we're not following what the charter is, then it just doesn't feel like it's a protection, it feels like it's not.
But we do. have a department.
Yeah,
I'm the director of the department.
I thought we said we didn't. I thought we said we don't have a department, so.
We do.
Okay.
Yeah. What I'm suggesting is that if you want to eliminate that from the charter, you could do that, but we do have that. department.
It just feels like when we've had conversations previously, there were several points where we're not doing what the charter says. Maybe we're misremembering that, but I remember there being several things where the charter doesn't match what's actually happening.
Well, again, I can't speak to the memory of it, but I'm not sure what those are. I can address those if you can find the specifics, but there is a Department of Law. I am the director of the Department of Law. I am,
yeah.
yeah, firefighter pension doesn't exist anymore. But
Yeah.
that can go. I mean, we've done other things in order to make sure we're accommodating that need. That can be changed.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, and if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
So to Ms. Finney's point, like with Department of Law, because we have had those discussions, so I recognize what you're speaking about. Over the years, the city has adapted what Department of Law. So how it was originally written, I can't speak to that. So Mr. Bruntrager is absolutely correct. We have that function. We follow it out. The city has a city attorney on staff. At times we consult with other attorneys as well, but we do not have, letterhead that says Department of Law, but we are still in spirit carrying out that function.
Yeah, I mean, would it be appropriate to name Article 8 City Attorney? Good. Yeah, I think some of the things that are different are like the petition signatures and ballots cast, votes cast, the way ballots are worded, requiring mimeographs and things that don't exist anymore. Some of those things that I think we've all discussed cleaning those up. So,
Well, the reason the Department of Law is structured this way is so that it's clear that I work for the city. So the city manager hires me. I have to be approved by council, but I get hired by the city manager. So as a consequence, again, making sure that there's a clear path and that it's clear who I work for, that's what this does.
Yeah.
That's what this does, because all directors are mentioned to the city manager. So that's why they put it. Because otherwise, I mean, I'm the chief cook and bottle washer, so again, I'm not it. But again, I'm answering to, that's why that's there. Is this essential to the charter? Is public works as a department, the way it's set out in Article 6, essential? No, but I do think it's important that we recognize that there is a department of public works and that we do enumerate that.
Madam Chair.
yes.
So on Article 6, the real provision to that is the qualifications part, that it has to be a person with an engineering degree.
Right.
So are you saying, Neil, that that's kind of up to us on the review board here to decide, is that something that needs to be in the charter? Or do we allow, the city to make that just kind of a qualification in the job search?
That's what I'm saying, is it's up to you to make that decision. But you're spot on. That's why it's in there, is because it just lists the qualification, but you can address that by ordinance.
Madam Chair, some folks just brought up briefly about some of the areas we don't follow. When you look through Article 5, there are numerous areas where the financial provisions of the charter conflict with state law, or simply the ability to get things done. Audit was a big one, time when we print the budget and those kinds of things. So I mean, if Article 5 is going to stay, we can again provide you with some of those areas that they.
Yeah,
We've gone through in previous conversations.
think we have a list here.
Yeah, you've already got those.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, the audits are due with the state of Missouri when?
the audits are required by the state 6 months after the end of the fiscal year. So current audit provision 45 days. Simply, it's not even doable because we don't have revenue that's
Right.
accrued to the fiscal year from the county. No offense, Mr. Cohen, for 60 days past the end of the fiscal. year.
Yeah.
It's not the county's fault. No.
Yeah.
So,
My fault specifically.
All right.
work on
Kyle.
this.
And I do think it's interesting that there is language in here that says the audit shall be made public in such manner as the council may determine. An audit is a public record once it's finalized as a report. So, again, 610, which is the Sunshine Law, mandates that it becomes a public record. So, but this was written in 1954. So
Yeah.
Sunshine Law did not yet exist. I
Just
did
like
not
today.
yet exist.
Yeah.
But I was close.
Um,
Are there any other specific questions that I can address here? Again, there's small tweaks, but structurally, there's a purpose for these things because it sets out duties that have to be performed. And again, I do think that as a threshold is an important thing to recognize.
Yeah. I have a question before you go. And
No, I'm good.
when we begin to vote on things we want to recommend to council,
Mhm.
what format will that be in? I mean, it's not going to be a formal amendment. Is it just voting yes or no on, say, section 5.3?
So I think we have to have a yes or no. I think, it should section 5.3 be amended to read whatever,
Okay.
or should section 5.3 be removed? So you can have those as alternative questions. But again, I think in the end, for your vote, to make sure your vote is clear, I think it has to be a yes or no to the specific recommendation you're going to make.
Right.
Okay.
So-
So I would suggest that at that point, I'm going to roll up my sleeves with some or all of you and make sure that we're getting this in a format that truly addresses your recommendations
Oh.
and makes it crystal clear as to what the question is.
Okay. And then for things that we've listed as not our first priority, but the council may want to consider that, should we vote on those as well?
I would suggest that you do,
Okay.
because again, that's what gives it the power of the recommendation. But you can make it clear in whatever report you ultimately deliver to council that your priorities are these items, whatever those items might be. And that as a secondary consideration, you would have, a second layer of recommendations that you would make.
Okay.
And again, just depending upon how extensive your recommendations are, that may be essential because looking at what's going on, you guys have done a great job of really tearing this apart and making sure that you understand each and every word and phrase and all that sort of thing. But again, you're going to be presenting this to a public that has not done what you've done. And are they going to begin to understand it? I don't know. I hate to be cynical, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So putting this in a format that is going to be useful and understandable, again. And frankly, I think that becomes kind of part of your recommendations.
Mhm.
It is that recognizing that if you give them too much, you're going to lose your audience. So, focusing perhaps on those things that are your greatest single priorities and making sure that those are there and having a relatively short list, because you don't have to do them all at the same time either. You can recommend, some now, some later. And again, if you do that, it allows you to prioritize.
Yeah.
And in your recommendations, I would strongly recommend that you do that.
Yeah. No, I don't mind doing that. I just, a lot's gone awry since 1965.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
there's a lot of cleanup in here, but yeah. Anything on that? No.
And I think ultimately, if I may, Madam Chair, in the end, you're going to produce a report that you all will then vote on.
Mhm.
Once it gets into a finalized form, it will come to you all and you will yay or nay it. And whatever the majority is, that's what it is. But I think that in that same report, you can also put priorities. Whoops, we lose, we just lost that screen, but they're still up here. You may set up priorities that, again, you have to figure out how you're going to vote on it. People may agree upon the changes, but not the priorities. So we'll have to figure out how to address that. But again, I think that becomes a question of, again, a vote and a plurality wins the day.
Mhm. Okay. Anything else for Neil?
If there are ever questions, and the chair has emailed me, if there's ever any questions, and Joe has too, and Paul has too. If there's questions that you want me to address to make your time more meaningful, let me know that. I'm happy to do that. I try and get here as often as I can, but this always conflicts this second and fourth Mondays of the month. This is the second Monday of the month, right? Always conflicts with two other meetings that I have. So again, it's a little hard to do, but I want to make sure that your time is meaningful because I respect the work that you're doing. So I want to make sure it's useful. So emails are great. I can make sure that those things are addressed and we can get to the issues. But if I leave you with nothing else, let me leave you with the idea that there's a structure and there's a limitation that I think you do want to impose. We do want to make sure that we free up council. We're not speaking about this council. We're speaking about other councils that could be problematic. And, again, less thoughtful and perhaps more difficult to deal with. You want to place limitations on there because you want to write this document, like all legal documents, to meet as many contingencies as you can. You want to make it as useful as you can to as many different councils as you can, ensuring both the powers of council, but also the protection of the people. So and with that, I'll get off my soapbox.
Okay. Thank you, Neil.
You need me to stick around?
I don't think so. No.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the update on our June 29th Webster Groves Boards and Commission listening session. And Joe, you want to give that update?
Sure, I'll start and then perhaps other members who were in attendance could also join in. So we did hold a listening session on June 29 at the Webster Library Meeting Room. We had 12 guest attendees, and I believe all but one of them were members of boards and commissions here in the city. The discussion was wide ranging. We started out with a discussion about the boards and commissions proposal that we're kind of considering whether to modify that language. There was comments made that on both sides of the issue, I think, in that at least one of the attendees referred to limitations on their board's power by the ordinance process, not the charter process. There was also some questions about, where does the this model city charter, where's that from and what is the basis of that? We had some good discussion on that. Ward's discussion, and again, we went through the topics in the online survey process that we did a few weeks ago, and we discussed wards. And there was, I think, views on both sides of the issue there. Comments were made about in favor of the at-large process. There was a recognition of at least one or two of the attendees that a ward approach would lower barriers to entry and participation and make the council people more accessible. Again, the discussion was on both sides of the issue. Same with compensation. I think there was, at least in my view, and others can disagree, I thought there was general assent that the compensation needs to be addressed. How far to go, I think, was kind of the question that came up. Discussion of petition thresholds. Some discussion on that. There was discussion of being concerned about raising the threshold. I think the attendees were still trying to get in their head, this whole issue of of the charter's language that says votes cast, but in reality, the city uses ballots cast and the implications of that from a number standpoint. And we discussed registration. And there was concern about raising the bar too high to get onto the ballot. And then a preamble discussion where there was, I think the group in general was well, or at least some of the members, attendees were like the language. One or two attendees did raise a concern about getting into something beyond the functional aspect of the preamble and to make value statements. So that is a good discussion, ran almost 90 minutes. And then I know Matthew and Tammy and Jeannie were there. Any other comments you want to add to the discussion? And Nicole was there also.
Yeah, and Tammy took really good notes. Do you want to?
I think one of the things that came out of it was people wanting to feel a little more of a pro and con kind of, assessment of some of the issues, or like what some of the things are we've come across with that, especially with ward versus at large. That was one thing that stood out to me, that I think we've tried as we're going through getting ready for the town hall, we're trying to add some of that language in there or examples. Trying to think if there was nothing else is coming to mind right away. But that was something that we noticed and we're trying to address so that people can have the information they need. The other thing was that in the survey, when we did it, that style where you click and you link into the additional information, I don't know that anyone there caught that that was something you could do. And so they felt like we were giving them information that was new to them, even though we were following the survey in the PowerPoint. So some of the charts and that kind of information, which we're making a point of including with the stations for the town hall.
Yeah, they just didn't click through.
Yeah.
Matthew?
No,
Any thoughts?
I think that's a good reasonable summary. So I don't have anything to add to those.
No, I thought it was a helpful process to hear the dialogue with those public members and I put together these notes. Tammy, thank you very much. And Jeannie kind of layered on a little additional elements to it. But I think it adds to our, world view, a community-wide view on the issues of concern. So.
Did we share those with everybody?
No, we have not.
Okay, we should do that.
We'll do that.
Yeah.
One
We'll do
other
that.
thing that they mentioned there, when we put up the compensation levels, the proposed levels, there was more than one person that even commented those aren't high enough
Hmm. Yep.
for the amount of work that has to go into this. So I think people want to kind of get an idea of where to land on it, but I don't know that a lot of people in that group were opposed to the concept.
Although they did point out the school board works for free.
Right.
So. yes, yeah.
And so does the crab.
One of the things that was mentioned had to do with, seems to me the architectural review board doesn't require people to be on it. Or architect.
Oh, I think it
Is
was,
which
was
one
it
was-
planning and zoning that
Yes.
wanted to have people having to have some sort of professional requirements similar to the architectural review board.
Oh,
And
Just as a,
go ahead.
We did do that.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's why he brought that up.
But a greater majority,
Mhm.
greater percentage now do actually have some sort of professional law.
Great. You should tell that board that. Uh-huh.
Okay, anything else?
No, nothing else on that
No?
topic.
Okay, thank you. Next, is preparation for the August 9th open house.
Okay, I'll give a quick overview of where things are at this stage. So we are doing an open house event on Wednesday, August 9, 5 until 7 PM. Per the doodle poll that was done a couple of weeks ago, courtesy of Dr. Peoples, we had responses from myself, Matthew, Kyle, Jennifer, Tammy, Jeannie, and I think Paul, who said that they would and can be available. Okay, if there's going to be a scheduling issue, please let Jeannie or I know, the chair and I know sometime in the next couple of weeks, just as we go through the process of trying to divvy up and decide how to approach staffing of this event. We're not right yet, but we'll go through the issue backgrounders, but let me give a little further background because the issue backgrounders will take a little while to go through, but in terms of format, we're looking at, I believe, poster boards sort of set up, and we'll call them stations that will be done for each of the major topics with paste up of these issue briefs in some form on those. We can either assign one or two of us to each of these stations or for the whole evening, or rotate around. Or alternatively, we can kind of just see based on the attendance where people glom onto and try to stack appropriately to that need. So we'll kind of work that through. If those of you who've done this sort of an event before, if you have suggestions on what's best to do, please let me know. We're working on these issue briefs, which we're going to try to get done here in the next probably week or so. Lock those down so that they can go into design and then set up onto the poster boards. In terms of publicity, we have also set in motion doing postcards to all residents of the city, and that's just a brief postcard invitation. This goes to, I guess, was it to postal resident, I believe. I forget what the name of how they do the city one here. And that is going to the printer this week, mail out later this week, I believe, according to Jenny Starkey. So that should be in mailboxes by the end of the week or early next week at the latest. So that's, more than 2 weeks notice. We can then look at getting a mention in I believe in Inside Webster Groves newsletter toward the end of the month. That will publish Thursday, Friday, July 27, July 28th issue of the Webster Kirkwood Times. So that will be 10 days ahead of the event. We can work with the city on doing a Friday page email mention too, to get in that reminder. Perhaps goes out on Friday, August 4. And then whatever other social media we can do some boost perhaps like that. Whether we do a paid ad in the Webster Kirkwood Times is kind of don't know if it's needed or not sort of question, because with the going already to the expense and the outreach with the postcard to all residents, maybe it's not as needed as before. So that's kind of the publicity angle. Is there any questions about that or aspect?
I was just gonna say that if there is social media, if we make sure we all know that, and then we can, share
Help it,
Yeah.
share and amplify. Good.
which we should do anyway, but it might just help to poke us all. And
Yep. Okay.
So if something were going to go in the Webster Kirkwood Times, would it be in the format of just a save the date kind of thing to go? Or would it be, like shortened versions of this that people can see in advance and then come to the town hall?
It would be more of a save the date and invitation to attend. I mean, it would not be the space to go into, other than maybe mention the topics
Yeah.
that are going to be featured we would not be able to go into any great detail.
I think that could be like really helpful. I don't know, sometimes when you're going through your mail, you just kind of flip through and then it gets recycled, real fast, where I don't know. Just food for thought. I think that, there is a casual reading nature of a lot of people in our community that might go through, and because we do, the city publishes, notices about different things, and I think they seem to me
Yeah.
like they would be well read.
Well, and we'll definitely make use with the city's permission here, the their inside Webster Groves news page at the end of the month. So we'll get some space there, a mention of that, hopefully.
Could we share this document or this thing as a PDF as part of that so people can see that? Because I think, one of the things that happened in our listening session is that people, they saw only our sort of final thing and had no idea how they were balanced, like Tammy was talking about. This gives balance and some idea, and people can think about it ahead of time if they click and just see that. But
Would a QR code work? Is that what you mean? Like something that you like, where at whatever it's on, the
like
postcard or?
the document that Joe's
Right,
working
but
on.
where it could link to that, that's where the
That
card,
would just
that's
be a
where the. link would
URL
take
that
you.
would open up that PDF or give them that PDF.
Right.
Some of the cities, what do you all think?
Well, I would just caution that something like that might need to have legal review. I mean, a lot of fact checking before this kind of a document is made public.
Yeah.
Again, getting it ready for the event will be a lift in and of itself. As we go through this, you'll see there's a lot of wording here, and we got to make sure we're comfortable with it, and particularly these pros cons arguments that we use on several of them. So,
Yeah, well, we'll definitely run all this past Neil too. Were you,
But-
anything? No.
but let us take that under
Okay,
advisement, consideration.
but the
I
more, the
understand.
more people can understand what's going on, the more informed they will be.
True. For people that do want to dig into the weeds and learn all of how we came to it, I think it's also important though to have like an elevator pitch boilerplate kind of version too. Just sometimes the details, because we've been doing this for many months, really add up.
Okay, well, let's kind of look through the documents here. I know it was emailed out to all the board members here, so that you can read it at your leisure. But we thought we'd just kind of quickly top line the format and some of the the content here of each of the sections. So again, we have one section here on the preamble. Talking about, the expanding of what was really referred to as the Declaration of Intent. If you look back at the Model City Charter stuff, it refers to this subjective language is referred to the Declaration of Intent. So kind of posted our viewpoint on that area. So I'll just let you kind of glance through here and talks about our, again, our findings in kind of a general sense. Then you just go on to the next.
Here, when you want to go.
Okay.
Let's make sure.
Okay. And here's a bit of explanation. Again, pulling from the Model City Charter language. And then the other findings and discussion. The chair helped kind of pull some of this language together too. So then here we kind of show the proposed language that could be added. And a brief discussion of arguments in favor, arguments in opposition.
How do you want to do feedback? Are you trying to go through the whole thing or do you want to like do feedback on this one?
let's go ahead and have feedback on this one and as we go through, because again, Chair will have to indulge in how much time to spend on this, but
I think we have time.
again, you do have this in your email and you can comment separately, but go ahead.
I was just gonna say, first of all, I really like this. I think this is excellent. But it seems very equal in the viewpoints. And personally, I think we could make it stronger in the pro if we want it. In particular, I would put in the DEI, there's something about DEI there on the viewpoints. I just think even having 3 bullet points there will sway people over, oh, they're equal. I mean, they're obviously not, the pros are stronger, but I would love to see 1 more bullet there.
Back up a minute, Joe. Or somebody. Or maybe it's forward. Isn't there discussion in there about the strategic plan and DEI?
It's all there in the middle, but
Yeah, that's in the middle.
it's easy to lose after you get past it, right?
That's in this discussion here.
Yeah, okay.
I just think pulling 1 or 2 points out of here, and the DEI is the one I picked, but it could be others, just to strengthen the pro might make sense. Because this was a lot on this page. It's all really good, but
Yep.
this is for the people who want to dig in. For the people that want the cliff notes, I want the cliff notes to also make the point.
Okay.
Okay, good point. Oops, we're going the wrong way.
Okay.
Okay, get back again.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
At the listening session that we had, there, it seemed that people weren't clear on whether this is just like, it's a gesture and it's meaningless, or if it actually really does start to establish some things that the city can be held accountable for. So like, for example, public engagement and things like that. Is this really just a feel-good gesture, or is this something that has a little meat to it?
I will tell you, it's an excellent question. And part of that I am non-committal on because we haven't really done this before. You know, the strategic plan that we will hopefully adopt at the next council meeting is the first one in memory. We haven't done a comprehensive plan in a couple of decades. The DEI statement is just a couple of years old. So we are new to setting these standards for our city government. I believe the goal is to actually hold people accountable for them. But we don't have a past history of doing that. And so I don't want to pretend that we have.
And I would point out that the model city charter language says this part of the preamble is not enforceable.
Yeah. And by the way, when I say that, I'm talking about what you're adding, not the charter itself. Obviously, the charter itself, we're accountable to all the time.
Yeah. I think one thing that I've been thinking about, and I've not raised the point, but do we want to add another article to the charter from the model city about public engagement? They have a big section on that. Is that? Pardon me?
That was part of the recommendation.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Well, we haven't broached that, and maybe we should think about that.
I think that's an important one. I think the level of public engagement that's been happening in the past few years is at a different level for our community, and that it's really helping to make our community better in a lot of ways. So if it was in part of the charter and it was something that continued going forward, there's great value in that.
Okay. Article 2 dealing with wards and at large. Again, taking the language that the subcommittee pulled together. Kyle, do want to make you aware that I altered the flow of the information a little bit, just to kind of better fit our template here. And again, we can work with the subcommittee and how to do the language. I would say that here on the issue of at large, we're not really making a case of, and I guess the subcommittee did not want to make a case of a viewpoint of why we're looking at this. So that's something just to kind of point out. and I hold this into just, that we're looking at 3 options to offer through public engagement. And then here to discuss the findings, the subcommittee review of the process. The examples that were shown. Kyle, I did take out the Kansas City portions, just because I didn't think that there was a space issue on this page and took those out. And then this backup document. And then here are the arguments that pulled in based on what the subcommittee had done, and I did finesse the wording in a few places, hopefully. But we can work that out over the next week or two. Now, on this one, I think, again, to the prior comment made about the number of arguments being made, I tried to keep these pretty even. But again, that is a perception issue to consider.
On this one, my sense was that we were split and didn't know, so it makes sense that they're split.
Any other questions on this section before I go on?
Yeah, if we go back 1 page in the opposition, it says minority residents' votes could be divided, decreasing the impact on election outcomes. So that's just where's that coming from? Just like,
Statistics. So, I mean, there's no way we could devise a ward that had majority, minority. We have people of non-white people living all over town. And if you divide those votes, actually, they will be divided. So it's not that it could be divided, they will be divided in terms of the wards. If they would not be divided in terms of the mayor or in terms of the at-large elected if we went with the hybrid. But there's no way they could not be, they will not be split if we do wards.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment on that?
Yeah.
I mean, I think technically what you're saying is correct according to the literature. It also is talking about when we're referring to 30, 40, 50% representation. And when we're talking about less than 5%, that division isn't going to be particularly meaningful. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that the literature is talking about a very different threshold than we have in our community in terms of the percentage of
Right.
minority residents.
But of necessity, it will divide those people. There's no way around that if we go to wards. Even if it's a small percentage, it'll be even a smaller percentage, right?
I'm talking about in terms of the literature, the actual realistic, meaningful impact when we're talking about this low
Yeah,
is
yeah.
really non-existent.
Yeah, well, and that's what that literature really said. I agree with that.
that bullet
That's
point
nice.
just seems so strongly worded and easy to misunderstand. In my opinion. And it's the first bullet in the opposition.
Yeah, and that's
Like,
really-
like mapping of wards would be contentious. That would probably be the biggest thing that would happen in our community
And-
is how to do it. And you would, yes, I don't know that, many people would agree. The meaning of and where that information is coming from isn't included with it. And I think there could be some room for not clearly understanding what's intended.
I even wonder about just swapping, well, first of all, swapping some of the bullets, that wouldn't have to be the first one, but also is it like minority residents votes impact could be decreased? Like, it could just be that like switching the order of the sentence, make it less, easier to process initially.
Right, to understand what,
Yeah.
what the intent
Same
was.
concept, but maybe just wordsmithing a little on that one.
And I suggest as we go along, to give this thought and submit your ideas by email
Yes.
to Joe or I or both. Because there's a lot here and we need to really go through it thoroughly.
I've made some notes of silly things that I'll email, but I wanted to at least say this. The
Uh-huh.
last bullet, parochialism. To me, that sounds like a hoity-toity word. And do we have a more down-to-earth word we could replace it with? I mean, to be approachable to everyone. To me, that's not a,
Favoritism. I mean,
so I'm happy to think about it too and what another word would be, but I just wanted to point it out that it's a word that I would be like turned off by, like, are you talking to me?
How is it different than the bullet at the top of the list?
Well, that's probably true too. That just that one word like stood out to me versus,
Yeah, I stole that sentence from something that Jeannie sent me.
okay. So wording does matter. On the compensation issue. So serve up what the issue is, has not changed. Show the current charter language. Talk about our findings, and this is a subcommittee and our other discussions. I did pull in the point of adjusting for inflation, what those annual compensation levels in $1965 would be today. I thought that would be a good reference point. Okay. And then show the comparison with some of the other charter, these are council manager forms of government here in the St. Louis County. I did leave in both the per meeting or monthly compensation level versus the annual. Several of the charters of these other cities talk about that. Went too far. And here I'm suggesting that we serve up two options. Option one would be to specify an initial increase in compensation and authorize the council to review future compensation every 4 years. That's in keeping with what I think our subcommittee had discussed. Our subcommittee, I think, was a little bit split on exactly what levels of the compensation to set. So I've left those blank for now. Option
So
two.
if I may, I think one of the key points that you've provided, we've been missing is that cost of living increase. Can we go back to that for inflation?
Yes.
I just think that's a point none of us have really looked at. I know we've talked about having it. So having that information, thank you, because I think it'll be easier for all of us to agree.
Good. Option two would be to not change the current compensation, but provide the council with authority to review compensation, perhaps at intervals of not less than 4 years, and determine compensation by ordinance and not set an amount. The council could appoint a citizens commission if they want to deal with this. So that would be basically, at least giving the council authority to address the issue at a future point.
And the first part of that is from the model city language.
Which part?
The city shall review compensation,
Oh, sure.
you know.
Can I say I have two thoughts on the two options? One is I don't like it because I still think we need to just set an amount and I think it's passing it off if we don't. So that's like, again, out of everything we're doing here, that's the thing I would, stake my claim to. But also I personally find this confusing because we have option one, option two, and then viewpoints in favor of increased compensation viewpoints opposed, and they don't seem like they're, like I expect you to say, this is option one, this is option two. So it's just harder for my brain to process too. I feel like that option two is just muddying the water.
I feel like as a subcommittee, that wasn't something we agreed on. So I'm
Yeah.
curious as to why we're putting it here.
I'm only adding it based on the results of the opinion survey and some of the discussion that some of the residents who participated in the listening sessions. Just throwing it out there as an option for consideration of, and we could pull it out if, but
And
then
the
I think, yes, that would be kind of a question of whether we're going to, take a vote to whether we're going to actually make that decision at this point in time.
In option one, did it include the Citizens Committee for review?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
But having that adjusted for inflation number gives us a basis of how to fill those blanks in, or gives us something where we can intelligently, like communicate to them, this is why we chose that number, instead of just trying to look at other cities and what may be their outdated models too.
Right. And actually, if you look at the numbers there, I mean, it ends up, if you look back here at the, council members, $5,800 a year. That actually ends up on the high end of several of the other municipalities, except maybe Richmond Heights.
Which was the one we compared to begin with anyway, wasn't it?
But yes, yep. I mean, we were looking at least during our discussions, I think I discussed Creve Coeur. I think others may have discussed others.
Yeah, not that this is the right time to make that decision, but those numbers look pretty good to me based on what we've discussed.
I think if we rounded them up, so it seemed like clean and simple, like 6,000 a month for a council member and 70 or a year, and then 7,500 for the mayor, then use that data to kind of back it up as a baseline, and then have a community selected review process every 4 years that people would understand and find it easier. They really, really liked the citizens reviewing the compensation for this council. That seemed to have been a really popular option.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome if we could reduce it and, give them fewer options, one option instead of two. And, even on the money, if we feel like those are good numbers, not present several options, but just present.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really want to kick this down the road for
Mm-mm.
somebody else to have to decide, as long as we're doing it. And
Agreed.
your approach, Tammy, I think makes good sense. And then we just get rid of that second option, because that contains the potential for citizen review every once in a while. So.
Would we be comfortable filling in the blanks with those numbers, since that they would be, close to the inflated original compensation?
The question will be is whether those are politically viable.
Mhm. But isn't that what the council would decide? I mean, we're just,
Well, again, option two is giving the council some flexibility, and perhaps, one approach that the chair could pursue and us as a board is that we put forward two options. One is our first preference is you set an initial compensation level. And that is our, recommended approach, whatever number we decide on. But if you're not ready to do that, at least do this, option two. And have that as a fallback position that the council pursue. And again, it depends on how we structure our report and recommendations. Something.
I
to
think in
consider.
terms of what we're presenting to the public, we need to be more clear on what we're recommending. And that is an increase.
Right.
Yeah, and then if we want to later discuss what we say to council, I think that's a separate discussion. If we want to have two options for council, that's different than this.
We could, yeah, we could base that secondary backup recommendation on what happens with the town hall and what our feedback is at that point. So if we throw a number out there and we're hard, kind of on it, this is what we're recommending with a review every 4 years by citizens. And then based on that feedback, if we get a lot of pushback, then we could give that information to the city council along with the alternative. If they felt like now was not the right time.
I did go ahead and took a shot at showing the budget implications.
Which is excellent. I love that.
And I would ask Dr. Peoples if you, Eric, can double check the math on the percent of budget. I mean, but that's what I came up with. But if you can verify that in the next few days, looking at these scenarios. Because one of the questions that did come up in our listening sessions was even by people who support the idea of raising compensation, you raise it, what's it going to cost? What will have to be cut to make room?
Right,
for
yeah,
that?
how are you going to pay for it?
How are you going to pay for it?
Mhm. Mhm.
That's a good point.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, Melissa. I said I'd like to reconsider the language about how it would contribute to a budget deficit since we did in fact pass a balanced budget this year as opposed to the past couple of years when it has in fact been in deficit. That is, by the way, very much a credit to the people sitting in this room.
Joe, just really
Thank you.
quick, to double check, did you base that on just the general fund or the overall?
The $31 million.
I'll double check.
I mean, if that's the right number to use, I mean, I just used against overall expenses. I mean, if there's a better number to use, again, trying to put it around context.
Appreciate that, Joe. That's a
Good.
key piece to have there. As far as the percentage of the budget.
Both sets of numbers you added are, both sets of numbers you added are a really good idea.
Mhm. Yeah, that last line is really powerful.
Okay. Yeah, we can come back and further discuss, but let's just move on, kind of look at the other items. These are a little more on the technical side, preparation of ballots. The chair wanted to have put in, whether we have this as a separate station or whether we fold that into a other technical changes, we can decide in the coming week or two here.
So this one, Joe, you should probably delete because
That
it's the
was
one that
updated.
Katie.
Okay, 'cause
mentioned.
Katie had a little bit different language that came in today.
Yeah.
Okay, so we need to update that,
Yeah,
but it's still, the city is still suggesting that we have some cleanup language here, right?
definitely.
On petitions. So again, we're looking at with the issue on petitions, you got two issues in play here. One is kind of the legal interpretation of this ballots cast versus votes cast, because one person, one vote issue.
So I don't understand that. I don't understand why anyone would think that the number of options on a ballot or the number of people on a ballot changes the number of people voting. And that just does not make any sense to me at all.
what the problem and that's why we included this screen grab from the St. Louis County Board of Elections
Huh?
is because they show cast votes number at one in the bottom left,
Correct,
okay? 18,000, whatever,
right?
okay? And that-
For one thing.
No, that's for all the people voting. You're voting for 3 council people. So but each of those times you cast your vote is being counted 3 times.
That's if you vote for all 3.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, a person could just want to vote for one and not really care about the rest.
And that's kind of a small case in most of our voting. We are voting for a person or a thing. So I understand that you say that, but I think that confuses people. Because it really, when I go to vote, I don't go to vote 20 times.
Right.
I go to vote.
Right, and that's ballots cast.
That's when I say I go to vote, I don't say I went and cast my ballot. I said I went and voted, and everybody, and we wear little stickers.
But in the old days,
Yeah.
you would have one piece of paper
Yep,
and you would turn it in.
right.
So it's St. Louis County Board of Elections is taking that same idea and the terminology that they're using, ballots cast is that one person going to vote.
Yeah, I think it is unnecessarily confusing.
The ballots is?
This distinction between ballots and votes.
Well, it may be confusing, but so what the charter reads and it's inaccurate.
Only if you were looking at the cases where we are voting for multiple people for one thing.
Yeah.
Anywhere else, it is absolutely accurate, and it is what we commonly think of. So I think, when we're talking about real people, I mean, that's what they think of. They don't think of that as, and so if we were to use the number for all of those people, yes, in fact, that would be incorrect in terms of the votes. But if we were to use any other thing, for example, the mayor, her election or their election is going to be, yes or no, it's not going to be.
Right,
Yes,
and that's
it
what
just seems
some,
confusing.
it
to the
is,
public.
So,
it
but-
is confusing, and that's the point of some, like Ferguson and one other municipality bases it just on the mayoral vote, which is one
Clayton and
person.
Florissant say votes cast for mayor. So to your point,
Be fine.
and that would be one way to address it.
Yes, yeah, but I think that putting that, it just seems confusing to me to give that to other people.
It is confusing, but it needs to be corrected.
Yeah.
Can
I-
we correct it by simply changing to the votes for the mayor?
Possible, yeah.
I mean, that would certainly.
I would just say ballots is better because there's someone who could not vote for the mayor.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also agree with your larger point. I don't think anyone reads this and thinks, oh my God, we're doing it off of 24,000 individual votes. No, it's just it seems needlessly pedantic to even be talking about this.
I worry about the people who are I can't say it, pedantic, coming in and saying we're wrong. Like, it's not a large number of people, but there are people who would come in and say it's wrong because of
But
that. My
also,
family is. one
we
of them.
don't know the intent of when this was done. I mean, elections were not awesome. Then sometimes even in language now, are you voting for or against? But then the language has to be this or that, kind of thing. It could have been something that was intentionally done decades ago. We don't know. But it should be cleared up and be modernized, I think.
I think the two options are vote for the mayor or go to counting, base it on registered voters.
I don't disagree that you should change it. I just don't think that public engagement is going to care about this. I think it's a error to do it based off of the mayor because you could not vote for mayor and vote for just your council person.
But it would still be a ballot cast.
Yeah, so
Right.
just make it say ballot then. But my point is that I think we're talking a lot about this very small issue when we have a very important thing to talk about in this section that isn't just,
Yeah, that's true. Getting hung up on that detail and not the others.
just like we've done right here.
Oh, okay, so, but you are saying the issue of the number
Mhm. Yeah.
is one that we should focus on.
Yeah.
Okay, and the number will be based on whichever basis we're going to be utilizing because it changes. All right. Let me go back here. The city clerk did come back to us here today with a full list of the initiatives, referendums, recalls. I think there was one other thing I think she added to it. and-
There, out of 8 petitions that were circulated, some made it to, some were submitted to the city, not all of them were. So since 1994, 8 things were petitioned by the city residents. Only 2, 4, 6 of them were presented to the city, and of those, only 3 went to ballot.
Went to the ballot.
No.
Well, then, then under discussion here, I guess perhaps these options need to be rethought. Is what I put together here were 3 options that we just reference ballots cast, or set a percentage that keeps it close to the current, but using registered voters, or slightly raising it.
I'm in favor of this myself. I think ballots cats makes sense. Or the registered voters, either way. I think that I still like this.
So you like options here, but not options on compensation.
Well, again, I don't have a strong feeling on this one. If we have a strong feeling, if there is a strong feeling, I think we should do it. I meant I liked ballots versus the votes is really what I was trying to say. Like, I like the language you're using. I don't have a
Okay.
problem with it. But yeah, as far as the options, I'm not sure because I have not gotten the sense that we have a clear thought on this. If we do, I think we should present it, but I had not gotten from the group a clear answer.
We did get a lot of strong pushback in the online survey for changing this.
But to which one?
Just changing the whole threshold and how it's done.
So I don't know which one is the right one to do.
And again, we're kind of, at least in earlier conversation, we were saying that maybe even votes cast for mayor could be an option.
Yeah, so I'm just putting in, I like sticking with these choices, either registered voters or ballots and not adding yet another choice, but I could be swayed, but I'm happy with what you got. So, but if we don't want more choices, we could simplify this, right, to be, do we change it? Or do we increase it or leave it the same? I mean, if that's the question we want to ask people. We could ask just that if we're trying to simplify.
Any other comments? In this section, this is again, a little bit on the technical side of conforming to state law and St. Louis County Board of Election requirements nowadays, that it'd be a yes, no wording to initiatives and referendums. Nothing real controversial here. So we'd probably put this into a technical fixes. But nothing really there. That's it. That's it.
Thanks for doing that.
Really loud.
Are we just sending feedback to you?
Me and Jeannie.
Both of you
But
said
yeah,
feedback
said
to you
chair,
both.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But you also said several things had changed. So if there's an updated version, maybe you want to send that before. we
No,
send-
no, go ahead and send, because I'm sure things will change yet again, so.
Any
Vanessa?
questions or discussions on previously reviewed charter items?
I have a question because it came up at the listening session, just kind of quietly, was do we know how much the last ballot initiative cost the city?
We do know. Katie has shared that information before. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I'm happy to return
I
that.
felt
answer.
like it was around 45,000 or something.
It's costly. I can get that answer.
Anything else?
So, I am wondering about Eric's comments and about the elimination of those various sections and his advice that we maybe tweak those sections and not eliminate very much. I sort of feel like the rug's been pulled out from me in terms of what I thought would be one of our signature changes. And you know, then we need to, if we're gonna do that, then we need to go back and look at all of those other sections in a different light than before, for that. And his recommendations are one thing. That we have an opposite recommendation from the model charter, which suggested that, you know, that all be excluded and just put in one thing. So I don't know what other people are thinking about all those questions, because I just sort of feel.
What it made me wonder was when we were suggesting that it goes more to ordinance and council, it seemed to me like that was giving people the right to interact with it more regularly by initiative and things like that. Whereas if it's in the city charter, it's going to be a lot harder for people to disagree with it, or what's the mechanism in the charter that holds the city accountable, like you're saying, for following and doing it. So those were the couple of things that came up to me.
Yeah, I don't have an answer. It's just,
No.
that's what I'm sort of feeling.
I agree. It feels a little frustrating and like we keep going in circles, and I think I'm just feeling stuck at this point. I'm like, okay, maybe we don't do it, but it does feel like we've gone kind of back and forth a lot.
Madam Chair, at least in my view, I am aligned more or less with where the city attorney is suggesting that we head in this section. I do have concerns about creating too many wholesale changes across those sections, just for the implications that he raises.
Can we put on the next agenda to take a look at the city charter model for the public engagement?
Mhm.
Good idea.
Okay, the discussion on the timeline for developing and finalizing our report to council. I asked Neil if we felt like we were tying up all the loose ends, if he would be able to be prepared on August 25th for us to vote on what we want to pass forward. He said he would.
August 25th?
Mhm.
That's a Friday?
No, I think it's a Tuesday.
Oh, no, July 25th is a Tuesday.
Oh, July,
August.
sorry.
But no,
July.
you did say August 25th, which is Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the 22nd.
22nd is, yeah,
Tuesday.
that's a real.
Oh, I
thing.
see. Got it. I just got confused.
Oh, and we did
Oh.
set that as a meeting date, yeah.
August 22nd?
Yeah.
I don't know why I keep doing that. I'm sorry. It's not out of frustration, it's just a loud pen.
So I think we'll learn quite a bit, hopefully on August 9th, about the pulse of the public. I hope we have a good turnout and see what people are thinking.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I have stayed away because it's any of these events. If you would like me to come to any of these events, I'm happy to, but I also want you all to be able to do your work without interference from anyone on council. So as we go forward, just keep that in mind.
Okay, thank you. So I guess one thing we could do is for everybody to kind of review this again and see where you're landing on priorities and what this council could consider in the future. And future meeting dates, we have July 25th, the town hall on August 9th. We have a meeting on August 16th, what worked out the best for most people that week of August 14th.
You said August 14th?
That week, we were up in the air. August 16th turned out to be the best
Okay.
date for most people. And then August 22nd.
Did we want 3 weeks in a row like that?
Well, we have a lot of work to do.
I think it's to try and meet that deadline of the 22nd to have the final.
Yeah.
Mhm. So can you go through those dates again?
July 25th.
Yep, the
August,
August dates, yeah,
August 9th is the town hall,
yep,
August 16th
okay,
and August 22nd.
gotcha, okay, so the 16th, gotcha.
And all including the town hall are 5 to 7, right?
Right, right. Do we want to go further out into September or hold off?
I will say from my planning perspective, if we think there's more, I'd love to get them on. And if we don't do them, it'll be fine, but it's gonna be really hard if we wait much longer and then say we're doing it. I will not have any flexibility.
September 11th and the 26th.
Okay. The 11th, when's Labor
That's a,
Day?
Labor Day is
The week
the
before.
5th, 4th,
Okay,
excuse me,
so what was it, Kyle, the 11th? and
September 11th and September 26th,
23rd?
which is the second Monday and the 4th Tuesday, 26th.
September 11th and September 26th.
Mhm.
Is that okay with you, Dr. Peoples?
I was just whispering to compare calendars. I don't believe I'm present on one of those dates, but that should not stop council from meeting.
I think that's the most pre-planned meetings we've ever had.
Well, that's true.
Good for us.
Can I bounce back?
Yeah.
Mayor Arnold offered that she would come. Should we discuss that at all? I was gonna say, I feel like, oh, that's a great idea, but
Star power.
do we?
Yeah, I think people like showing up when you're there.
Well, we can also take anybody that's difficult and just throw them to you. Not actually why, but
So.
I guess my concern would be, Laura, is that people are gonna pigeonhole you and want to know what council's thinking of this.
Well, I was going to say the same thing. I think some of the feedback on the survey was, it sounded like this is something council's doing. And I think that we should maybe present ourselves as separate.
Yeah, I would,
Yeah.
my preference would be to delineate us.
Yeah.
Not that I don't love you.
Yeah, I agree with that, with the not being there.
I'll be sad about it, but
Always.
Oh, Kyle.
Thank you for the offer.
We'll stop by your place afterwards for drinks and,
We are gonna do that.
I've been thinking
Well,
about that. We,
That's what we're gonna need it.
and Tammy, you said we weren't being paid.
Anything else for the good of the cause? Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make it.
Kyle?
second.
Tammy, second. All in favor?
Hi.
We're adjourned. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.